Hello, thank you everybody for joining us today. Here for another presentation in partnership with MP and Neela for today's topic, which is going to be creating successful and compliant job postings. So um, certainly in today's age, we're still in a very competitive job market. So we want to do everything that we can to make sure we get our job postings in front of the eyeballs of the right people that'll end up being successful employees for us. So that's what we'll be talking about today. For those of you who are new or unfamiliar with MP, we're a full-service human capital management company offering a whole bevy of services, including HR and HR advisement, payroll, benefits administration, time and attendance, and compliance, supporting businesses of all industries and sizes across the country. If you wish to know more, feel free to check out our website. Just a quick legal disclaimer before we dive in. Please don't construe anything today as legal advice. We hope you'll get a great deal of information from today's presentation from an HR best practices standpoint. My name is Paul Carelis. I lead the HR services and tax credit services teams here at MP. Pleasure working with you and partnering with Neela. We love helping the members and the general community with their HR questions and education like we're doing today. So in terms of what we'll cover today, we'll definitely go over the best practices and how to successfully put together a good job posting, but we'll also talk about the importance of having a strong and compliant job description behind that. You really want to make sure that you do have a solid job description for any job that you're going to be posting. We'll talk about interaction between what we publish out there in our job postings and making sure we don't violate the Americans with Disabilities Act. We'll talk about position titles and how to frame those, steps in writing a successful job post, as well as some government resources available to you to make sure you're remaining compliant as you go out there. So, as we said, recruitment is really what we're focused on today, and the job postings and how they aid in that effort. But really, a solid job description should be behind that. And the job description is not only going to help put our job posting together, and there are some key differences that we'll cover in a second, but they help really throughout the employment life cycle, from performance management and performance issues, training and development, compensation, and compliance. Having that solid job description will not only aid in the job posting, it'll make up a large portion of it. It should also help you with your framework of developing your interview questions, creating the criteria and the candidate profile for who's going to be your ideal candidate for this position to help you kind of sort through. Hopefully you're in a position where you get a ton of applicants and a ton of resumes in, and having that, really being sure of what your requirements are, what your must-haves are, what your nice-to-haves are for the position you're hiring for, will help cut down and limit the people you actually go on to screen or interview. It's also going to help you determine what are the essential functions of the job, what are the real qualifications and requirements, and will also help you, as you interview folks, consistently evaluate them. So as we kind of interchangeably use job postings, job ads, and job descriptions, it's important to really understand the difference. So in the job ad, you're really selling the position. Once you're at the job description stage, people are hopefully bought in. It's really just an understanding for what their job is that they have. At the job ad, you're going to, or posting, you're going to be going over a lot of that same stuff and making sure you're clear and honest and concise with it. But you really have to capture people's attention. You know, what's in it for them, why they should be wanting to work for your company, why they should be interested in this position. So there's really a selling aspect of it. Both the job ad and the job description will list out the qualifications and the skills required. Another thing that you'll see in a job posting that you might not see in the description itself would just be more about the organization, the company culture, contact information, potentially location, things like that. And as I said, you want to get a good idea of the compensation and the salary range or the hourly wage that you're willing to pay for a position. Again, sometimes the market will dictate that, and maybe it'll alter until after you've posted the job, and you see what's out there and what you can afford or what people are requiring to come make a change. What we're seeing now, for those of you who do have employees or locations out of state, there are more places that are actually requiring disclosure of pay range on the job postings. So California just a week or two ago passed a law that's going to require that for any jobs in California. New York City passed one a little while ago, but that is going to be taking effect next month, November 1st. So um, you'll start to see that pop up more and more, and it could certainly hit New England at any time. So um, that's often a strategic decision whether or not to post compensation information on a job posting. But um, as time moves on, just make sure you're remaining compliant and doing so when it is required by city or state. You do also want to make sure you're correctly determining the FLSA or Fair Labor Standards Act status of a role, meaning is it an exempt position based on the duties and the primary functions of the job? Is it something that meets one of the listed exemptions? Is it, managing other people? There are some motor carrier exemptions as well. You want to familiarize yourself with those. Or is this going to be a non-exempt position where the employee will be eligible for overtime? As you're writing out the qualifications, and we'll talk about this more, but you do want to make sure that in your language um, and in the job duties, you're being mindful of anything that could be interpreted as discriminatory. As you're going through the process, you want to kind of think out, are there accommodations that can be potentially made for certain primary duties of this job or not? So an example I often use, even when I'm consulting with people outside of this industry, is if you have a driver and they lose their vision or by some other means lose their capacity to be able to operate a motor vehicle, um, sometimes there just frankly are things that cannot be accommodated no matter how much you try. um, for the position of driver, there really isn't an accommodation that can be made if they can't operate a motor vehicle. So there might be other positions available to them, but really what the ADA requires is does not require a change in role um, as part of what's known as the interactive process. And this goes for ongoing employees as well as in your job postings and as you interview. You want to go over the primary functions of the job and what's required, and then ask, is that something that you'll be able to do with or without reasonable accommodation? So when it comes to the ADA, which is important, and we have seen operations where um, agencies and groups have gone in, applied for positions, send disabled people in for positions just to see, what happened. Were their efforts chilled or discouraged? Were they sent away, not allowed to apply or denied the role? So it's something you want to be very mindful of and always keep in the back of your head as you're putting job postings out there, as you're performing interviews, as you're encountering situations in the workplace where people become disabled or unable to do certain tasks. So again, the ADA is in place. Technically, for businesses with 15 or more employees, I always recommend you play it safe there. If you're a little under that you should still follow the guidelines. But it is for qualified individuals, so they do otherwise have to be qualified for the job. Um, just because they do have a disability doesn't mean they can work any job or any shift or really dictate what the accommodations are. Again, the methodology and the terminology is interactive process. So they can definitely request accommodations. You can definitely suggest accommodations. And at the end of the day, if there is a reasonable accommodation that can be made that can let this otherwise qualified individual be able to perform the essential functions of the job, then it's something we need to explore and try. If the accommodation that's being requested would be an undue hardship on the business, and there is, that's definitely a moving target. A lot of factors there, definitely the size of the organization, the potential expense of the accommodation, what effect it would have on the workplace, things like that are all taken into account. So um, just because someone requests an accommodation doesn't mean it's reasonable. And if you can prove that it would be an undue hardship on the business, then it does not have to be granted. The federal government does have a really cool site called Ask Jan, um, that does have a whole litany of resources available when it comes to reasonable accommodations and being able to find those or determine what is and isn't a reasonable accommodation. So definitely a site that we here at MP recommend if there is gray area or a tricky situation. Ask Jan can be a great resource. So a trend we've seen over the last decade or so has been businesses getting really creative with their job postings and their position titles. You see a lot of ninjas out there, whether it's a customer service ninja or a logistics ninja or a dispatching ninja, whatever it is. I don't know why that got a lot of buzz and a lot out there. But at the end of the day, and I can't obviously speak for every generation out there, but if I was to be looking for a job, it'd be something where I'd really want something more realistic and a little bit down to earth in terms of job title and a little bit more clarity and understanding for what I'm getting into. I think, especially for qualified candidates, most often your best candidates are what are known as passive candidates. So they might not be actively looking for work, but if you can get a posting in front of them via social media or, headhunting or recruitment efforts, um, there's going to be some uncertainty there. They're going to have to be convinced to want to make a move. So while you want to stand out and catch their eye, you also don't want to leave too much uncertainty. So using a really creative job title or a vague job title could leave more questions than answers and could just cause them to keep scrolling by. So again, with your titles, you want to be clear and concise. You want to avoid any lingo that's really specific to your business. If there's a job and what you call it within your company, but not everyone really understands what that is. Again, you're looking to get some eyeballs and get some attention to keep reading. Be mindful again when we talk about having your discrimination hat on. Avoid anything that would suggest someone of a certain gender or a certain age as being the person in this role. So person rather than man or woman is the general rule of thumb there. And especially if you're working with multiple people or using an outside service to help you with your recruitment efforts, you want them to be able to understand what the job is based on the title. So if you're having internal questions about what a role really does based on the title, then the general public certainly will. So what you really want to do as you put together your job posting and your job description for a role is you want to do an analysis of the job. If it's something that's an incumbent role, there's already someone doing it, or it's going to be adding a headcount to an existing team, really take a look at the people in the seats now and get their take for what they do on a daily basis. If you already have job descriptions for them, review it with them. Is this still accurate? Especially for businesses in a changing world like yours. And for so many members of NELA are small businesses, and people are wearing a lot of different hats, and sometimes those responsibilities can shift over time. Make sure that your job descriptions are accurate and current. An important rule of thumb is, let's say you have someone retiring and you're going to be replacing that role. This is whether it's the job description for them while they're still working, or as you're creating something for the future worker for you. You want to think about the job and the position and not the person currently doing it. This is especially important when you talk about the requirements for the job. So let's say this person that you've had in the role for a decade, they've got a master's degree. in a certain field. They've got experience in different areas. But when you talk about the position and when you're replacing this person or when you're adding someone else to the team to serve in that same role, is that master's degree really necessary, or is that kind of overkill? Do they have to have all that experience that the other person has, or maybe no, not necessarily. So really be mindful of the job and the ideal candidate who's executing on the job rather than the incumbent in the role. You do want to think about those requirements long and hard. You also want to think about physical, environmental, or other factors that you're going to want to disclose. And then you're going to kind of want to write the summary for the description, and then really the kind of the description for the job posting, which we'll go over some samples of in a second. So as you're going through this, you really want, especially again with small businesses, you might have someone that has 20 different tasks that they complete. And if you put that out there and post that online, someone's going to feel overwhelmed before they start and just say, there's way too much to this role than I'm willing to make a leap for. While you do want to have a lot on the job description and make sure you're not sugarcoating it or missing out on any key functions, you want to focus on the 4 to 8 major functions. Try to keep it brief. It's great if this can be 1 page, no more than 2. And then think about what is the percentage of time on a typical basis spent for each of these core functions. So in our example here, we've got a head fleet mechanic. 60% of the job is repairing and maintaining the company vehicles. 15% is supervising and directing the garage and cleaning staff. 10% is tracking and accounting for all parts and supply inventory. And 5% is maintaining the standards of safety within the department. So hopefully, yep, that adds up to, no, we're 10% short, I think. So I'll have to revise that, but I'm in HR. I'm not a math genius, so forgive me there. As you list these out, you want to list out the duties for the job in kind of prioritized order. And as you do, really think about, is the duty necessary to perform the job? So should you land yourself in an ADA accommodation situation? That's a question that's going to be asked of you. Is this something that's really required for this position, or is it something that could be potentially delegated to someone else? Is it really a crucial function of this job title? How frequently is that duty performed? How much time is spent performing that duty? Can it be redesigned or performed in another manner if needed? And can it, again, be reassigned to somebody else? So in our example, some of the ways we might list this out for that head fleet mechanic would be perform weekly inspections of fleet vehicles, make any necessary repairs, and perform scheduled maintenance, ensure safety equipment is used consistently, and order parts and supplies needed for the department monthly or as needed. You do, again, want to really consider the position requirements for the role. What are the skills that they need to have as they come through the door? What do they need to come with? What can be trained? Similar with the knowledge, what do they need to come into the job knowing? What can be trained? What education certifications are required? And again, this can be a sliding scale. You can certainly say something is strongly preferred or a plus. We'll go over that in our example in a second. If they do need to have a specific certification, a specific licensure, are you only willing to hire people that already have that? Are you willing to allow some time for people to obtain it? Is it something you're willing to pay for? Depending on what the answer to that question is, you want to make sure that that's very clear in your job posting. And again, you want to make sure that whatever you are putting, especially if it's going to be a hard and fast requirement, that you can tie it directly to the job and make a business case as to why that person needs to have that experience, that certification, that education. Because you can really paint yourself into a corner. So if you say someone has to have a certain advanced degree and you just come across this ideal candidate who's great, is going to be awesome for the job, but they don't have that, that's something you kind of want to think about, because you've kind of excluded them, unless you're going to hop outside of compliance to hire that person anyway. But really, you're going to want to consider, is it something they really need to have to be able to do this job before you say it's absolutely required. So for the position requirements, change the warehouse supervisor. Minimum of 3 years hands-on experience, including diesel, fleet experience preferred, valid driver's license required, CDL a plus, must own a basic set of hand tools, and have the ability to track inventory through the online system. So sometimes something that people overlook or don't give much attention to is computer literacy. So if that's going to be an important part of the job, if they're going to be on your computer for a decent portion of the day, or expected to maneuver through Excel spreadsheets, or be able to send out emails, or use a industry-specific platform, you're going to want to list that in there, just to make it clear, and talk about it in the interview as well. All too often I've seen people who have hired people based on their kind of blue-collar skills, but that don't have computer literacy, and then they're really in a jam because they didn't really know or ask about their comfortability with technology, and it's been a hindrance. So definitely want to consider physical demands, environmental demands, and any other special demands that might be unique to the role or your industry. So for our head fleet mechanic example, requiring frequent bending, squatting, stooping, reaching, carrying of items throughout the workday, the ability to work in a constant state of alertness and safe manner, that comes in big time when we talk about legalization of marijuana and things like that, and obviously DOT regulations and federal motor carrier regulations come into play to some extent there, but we see this a lot in warehouse, another industry we work closely with, as you saw on that previous description, and other roles. If it's a safety sensitive position, you want to note that in there, so that whether it's marijuana or other prescription drugs that might be completely legitimate and they have a valid prescription for, that if they're in a safety sensitive position, if they're having to work in a constant state of alertness in a safe manner, that could come into play, and you might need to get a fitness for duty or clearance from a doctor if their ability to be alert and work safely is in question or jeopardy. You may also want to discuss or disclose any noise issues as well. So here in the job description is what the position summary might look like. Very, very brief, anywhere from 1 to 3 sentences. Doesn't have to really go into any great detail or be anything too enticing. For our head fleet mechanic example, it might be supervises and coordinates all maintenance and repair functions of our fleet of vehicles, including tune-ups, tires, breakdowns, detailing, and minor auto body repairs. So that's for the job description. In a job post, you'll see, we're really putting it out there and trying to catch someone's eye and provide a little bit more and really sell the position and sell the company. So here's our sample introduction in a job posting for the same head fleet mechanic. Are you a talented automotive worker looking to advance your career in a setting amongst a fleet of modern advanced vehicles and as a part of one of New England's top companies? Paul's Primo Rides is looking for a head fleet mechanic to help take our operations to the next level by ensuring that our vehicles are the safest, most reliable, and most comfortable in the industry. Paul's offers competitive wages along with a 401k with company match, paid time off, and more benefits that we can list here. Please see the position description below and contact us if you feel that you are up for the task. So again, just something with a little bit more pizzazz, a little bit more life, breaking out of that kind of boring, monotonous HR jargon and speak, to be a little bit more human. Disclaimers are oftentimes a good idea, just to say, give yourself an out, not designed to cover or contain a comprehensive listing of activities. Job duties, responsibilities, and activities may change at any time with or without notice. Always a good idea to have that in there. Another good idea, in addition to the disclaimers, it would just be a statement that you're an equal opportunity employer. You don't discriminate based on any protected classes. You know, different companies take different positions on that, culturally, in terms of how much they want to say or how much they want to promote or encourage applicants from different areas or groups. Feel free to do that as well. So when it comes to our top 10 tips for a successful job posting, first, put your salesperson hat on. So again, you are in a position, especially in this current job market, where you need to sell the job, you need to sell your company and why people should consider working for you. So make sure that what you're putting out there, what you're posting, what you're putting in the industry publications, online, social media, on Indeed, wherever it may be, that you're really, really selling your company and the opportunity. You want to do your best to briefly and succinctly, but still successfully convey your company culture. What is it that makes your company special and different? Um, what kind of events do you hold? What is the mission of the organization? What awards have you won? What are the what are the core values of the business? Anything like that that again can separate you from the pack. 3, find out where your desired audience may be looking. So what I recommend is sometimes if you get a couple of hits on something, don't be afraid to ask a candidate, hey, how did you come across this? Ask them for their feedback even on the posting. What caught your eye? What made you apply for this? Anything we could change about the job posting that would, better explain what we're about or what the job is about. But really try to find out where your desired audience may be. And that can change depending on the position. So your drivers may be more likely to frequent a certain site or a certain event versus dispatchers or your maintenance crew, whatever it may be. So take some time to think about that, and especially if you're paying to post anywhere, make sure you're doing it wisely and not wasting any money. Again, think really long and hard before listing something as required, whether it be a degree or a certification or a certain amount of time. Something you can do is say that this requires X degree or X certification or equivalent work experience. So that gives you a bit of an out that if a role normally say requires a bachelor's degree, but if they've got equivalent work experience, if they've been working in the industry for 10 years and just kind of started out of high school and apprenticed, that they may be considered equivalent. 5, don't hide things. So the worst thing you can do, recruiting is a arduous process. It can be painful, it can be expensive, but nothing's more expensive than going all the way through and getting someone signed on and getting them trained for them only to realize they didn't really understand what the job was all about and that they're no longer interested in going back to their previous employer or, leaving for the next opportunity. So as much as we're tempted to be that everything is great, we've got our salesperson hat on, we're selling the opportunity, we're selling the company, you do want to make sure you're disclosing the full breadth of the job and getting their buy-in, because then you can't get off on a much worse foot than them feeling like they weren't getting an honest description of the job during the interview process. 6, consider listing your pay range. So again, you're seeing this as a requirement in certain places, none in New England at this time. And using this as a best practice can vary by industry, by position, by job market, by your pay philosophy. If you feel strongly or know that your pay is more competitive or better than others in your field, then that might be something you want to highlight and might be one of your selling points. So do at least consider it, as it is a growing trend. Before anything gets published or gets onto the interwebs, obviously there's a lot of potential exposure and liability when it comes to putting yourself out there in a job posting. Make sure you or a trusted professional proofreads your posting, not only for grammar and spelling and all that, which is certainly important, but really proofread it with a discrimination lens. Um, could something be construed as, really trying to discourage older workers, or, um, that you're really looking for, people from a certain background or a certain gender, things like that. So make sure you look at it and that it doesn't, that it passes the smell test in terms of discrimination. Get feedback from your staff. So say, hey, look, this is a new position we're hiring for. Want to get your take. Does this sound accurate to what we're all about? Is this something that you might want to share with your friends and former colleagues at other places you've worked, and maybe get some referrals in? Do think about keywords. So this wasn't an issue back in the day when we were just posting things in the newspaper, in the Globe or the Herald or wherever it may be. But we have to realize now that we're in the internet age, we're in search engine optimization and all of that. So look around, look at your competitors, see what the terminology that they're using in their job postings is. See, think about it. What do people talk about when they talk about this role or talk about our industry? So that if someone's doing a search, and whether they're searching on Indeed or searching on Google or wherever it is, that you want to make sure that if they're searching for something, even if it isn't an exact match for the title that you have or the company, that your job posting is coming up in their results because you're using those keywords. Another thing, especially when, hiring the younger generation, something we see in survey after survey is that they really want to understand and get feedback and have a good sense of how their role and their contributions are aiding, the bigger goals of the organization or the mission or the core values of the company. So you want to make sure you intertwine that in some way, that, even though this is a role that they're going to be detailing the cars and cleaning them, or maintain, something that they may not see as a major role. If you can speak to how important that is, and that, you're known as, having the most impeccable vehicles in the industry, and that you get rave reviews from your customers, and that you're looking for the right person to carry that torch. It's really good if you can give them that encouragement and let them know how their contributions contribute to the bigger picture. So as I said, in addition to Ask Jan, the Department of Labor also has some great resources when it comes to developing job postings and job descriptions with an eye on compliance. So there is ONET Online, and there is the Occupational Outlook Handbook too, that can really help with, especially when you're talking about working conditions and requirements for different positions in different industries. So definitely recommend checking those out as well. And Katie from our team will be sending out to everyone a copy of these slides and a copy of the recording. So don't feel like you have to jot these down right now. You will have these available in the slide deck. All right, well, that does conclude our presentation. As I always do, I do want to remind you that members are encouraged, if you do come across any HR questions, whether or not they're related to something like this with job posting or job descriptions, or something completely different, an employee relations issue, a question about a new law, a new regulation, about how to handle a wage and hour issue, our team does provide complimentary support to members with their HR questions. To do so, you just go to mp-hr.com/NELA, and we are happy to help out with any of those questions and provide a quick response, and hopefully one that will help you with your business and your HR needs. But other than that, that concludes this session. I thank you once again and look forward to talking to you again next month. Thanks so much.